Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is, what is today? November 28th. So let's set our intention, aspiration, by saying the four immeasurable prayers. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. When we spoke about saying that prayer and it not just being all beings being other beings. When we say all beings, it's like us and all beings as one. So that's really what you're aspiring to. That all these beings are connected, as are you, as is everything. Non-duality being the view that we spoke about in Buddhism. We're going to start. Sorry, what?
Human and non-human.
Yes. Go ahead.
All beings meaning human and non-human. All beings, all sentient beings.
All sentient beings, human and non-human, which includes animal and the other realms of beings, like hungry ghosts, and pretas, and all those things. That's a long conversation that we haven't gotten into yet. So we're going to do a meditation. We're going to start our study of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, which is a very short but condensed teaching by a monk, Gochu Togme. It's very much heart practice of Garchen Rinpoche, but we're going to be using, Victoria's going to be we're going to study it from a book by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche called The Heart of Compassion, that Nick will show us at some point. The cover, if you want to actually purchase it at some point, might be worth getting. But first we'll meditate. Victoria will talk about the 37 practices, and then we'll answer questions or discuss things. You may have a lot of questions about what she talks about. So let's start with meditation. Let's do the 9 purifying breaths. We start with the right hand, the Vajra fist, so the thumb is tucked under, and we go from the right hand, we go to the left nostril. We're going to breathe into the right channel, which is either white or red, depending on how you want to define yourself, your configuration, corresponding to your gender or not, however you want to do it. I do it on the white. Traditionally, the men, white is the right channel, the blue is the middle always, and the red is the left in me, or it could be white on the left and red on the white. And the white channel corresponds to the poison of anger. And the anger liberated is patience. And on the left side, the red is the poison of attachment. Liberated is
wisdom of equanimity.
Wisdom of equanimity, or love as well. And the middle is the channel of wisdom. Ignorance is a poison, as a poison. So let's start on the right side. Left hand to the right hand to the left nostril. Breathe in. We hold it where the 3 channels join at the navel. Switch to the right, hold the right nostril, and then breathe out. You're breathing in the enlightened energy, enlightened aspects, and you're breathing out the diluted, defiled, the poison. We switch. Left hand going to the right nostril. We're going into the left channel. Now we don't hold the nostrils, we just breathe both nostrils into the central channel, the blue channel. Hold it at the bottom, and we breathe out the ignorance. We're breathing in this enlightened wisdom that understands the view, shunyata, view of emptiness, interdependence, non-duality, interconnectedness, impermanence, those things. On the third breath, we're going to breathe it out almost through the crown. So your consciousness is merging with space. Your mind is merging with limitless space. First breath. And breathing out that delusion mind that's, sees self and other, separates ourselves from our true nature. Last breath, eject consciousness into space, and we'll take it right into 11 minutes of meditation. For those of you who are new, stay with the practice and listen while you practice. Listen what I say while you practice. Start with the breath through the nose if you can. If not, whatever combination, or use your mouth. But focus on the place where your breath is moving, top of the lip and the nostrils. Focus your attention there as you relax and just settle. And as your mind starts to think, all we're doing is becoming aware of the fact that we're thinking. And once you're aware of it, go back to that breath. Go remind yourself to go focus on that spot where the breath is moving. And that's all we're doing. You're alternating your attention between those things. Find yourself thinking, become aware that you're thinking, go back to the breath. You're basically just checking in, looking at what your mind is doing. And it's your mind looking at what your mind is doing. Become aware of the thought, go back to the breath. You can use the image, the visualization almost of a cloud emerging from a clear, pristine, unstained, limitless blue sky. The cloud is the thought, the sky is the mind. Cloud has arisen from the sky, dissolves back into it, just like the thought arises from the mind, dissolves back into it. And it will dissolve when you become aware of the fact that you're thinking, and leave it where it is. Don't follow it, don't push it away. Just acknowledge it. And back to the breath. Become aware that you're thinking, go back to the breath. Or watch the cloud just dissipate. Just become aware. Don't regret it. Don't push it away. Don't think it's bad. Don't think it's good. Just leave it where it is. Back to the breath. Okay, good. Well, meditation is working with the mind, obviously. That's really what Buddhism is in spiritual practice, because everything you perceive and everything in how you relate to the world and interact is all through the mind. So, working with the mind is how we address this. Working with the mind is really the practice, taming the mind. Um, and everyone, there's a lot of people on today, so I'm assuming there's some new people. So we didn't go into the specifics of the posture and the gaze and break it down, because people who are here regularly, I don't like to always go through review. But if you are new, check out some of the prior classes on Nick, if you put up the YouTube channel at some point, that people can go look at where we really go specifically into the posture, the seated posture, and the alignment and the gaze, the breath. We go into real detail about how the technique is. I mean, I just did a little bit of review at some points, but if you need that, you should go to that if you're new. And remember, everyone I talk to about meditation always says, "I'm not good at it. It's hard." It's every single person. It's hard for everyone. Maybe unless you're a Buddha who's reincarnated or something, but pretty much everybody else, including us, it's just hard. It's something we haven't done. The mind for our whole lives and prior lives has been lost in a sea, a train of thought all the time. So we just want to say something. Just know that. So don't be discouraged when you start, because when you start, you're going to see how busy the mind is when you really start to look at it. And don't be discouraged by that, because everyone says, "I'm not good at meditating," as if the first time you try it, you're going to sit here and have this kind of, complete, moment of just oneness with the universe and everything like that. It doesn't work that way. It's a process and it's a practice. And so do not feel that you're less suited to meditation than others. People think their mind is exceptionally busy, and everyone's mind is. No one's mind is more unique in that aspect. Trust that. Okay. So the 37 Practices of the Bodhisattva by Gochu Togme Zangpo, who is a monk who sat in a cave for a really long time and came up with these. These are very, this is a heart teaching of, like I said, of Garchen Rinpoche. It's a very condensed, they call pith teachings, pith instructions. So there's the famous book by Shantideva called the Bodhicharyavatara, which is the way of the Bodhisattva way of life. This is almost a condensed version of that. It's very, very potent and very beautiful. Many teachers have taught on this. Garchen Rinpoche does very often, and one of our great teachers of the last century, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, also taught on that in his book, The Heart of Compassion. And we spoke about this a little bit, and we made it available through the website, and I hope some of you got a chance to look at it. And today, Victoria is going to start to discuss the first three of the 37. So listen, as something comes up, you want to ask a question, we're going to have time for questions. I'll turn it over to Victoria.
Good morning, everyone. So the 37 Bodhisattva practices, as Michael mentioned before, it is a pith condensed teaching that includes everything. It's a complete system that holds the view, conduct, and meditation practice. And today we're just going to discuss the three first stanzas, or shlokas, as it's called in Sanskrit. The first few of them, up until 7, are what are called preliminary or foundational. And the foundation, preliminary does not mean it's less important. Actually, preliminary and the foundation is even more important, because it is how we set our mind at the beginning of the journey, that a journey is going to be influenced by that mindset. So it is of the utmost crucial importance. And as I said before, the The 37 Bodhisattva practices is a system of union of wisdom and method, and it is a complete path. So if you can eventually internalize this, there is an answer to every question regarding anything in life, regarding the view, meditation, and practice. And those are the three things that encompass the entirety of our existence, really. So stanza number 1. At this time, when the difficult to gain ship of leisure and fortune has been obtained, ceaselessly hearing, pondering, and meditating day and night in order to liberate oneself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence is the Bodhisattva's practice. So this verse implies that we are beginning to see the real nature of samsara, and we are pivoting to exit it. At the same time, we already know on some level that we have the means and the power to do so. We turn our mind away from samsara and towards the shores of awakening. Samsara is described as the ocean of suffering, because whatever pleasure or peace we gain in samsara, we very quickly turns to suffering over and over again without fail. That we know. So we are starting to see that. That's the beginning point of why we set on the path. Also, these preliminary practices are called setting on the path, or getting started on entering the path. And entering the path and how we enter it is of the key importance. So these preliminaries are extremely, extremely important. So we suffer the suffering of change in samsara that specifically plagues the human realm. The suffering of change is what we call birth, old age, sickness, and death. That's, or when things arise, they stay for a little bit and they vanish. That is the suffering of change. We also suffer the suffering of suffering. There are 3 kinds of suffering. Second is the suffering of suffering. That's when we have a headache, but we go, oh my God, me, why do I have a headache? We suffer suffering. We compound suffering upon suffering. We're cold, we're hot, we're this, we're that. Our mind never stops fabricating suffering. And so that's the suffering of suffering. And the suffering of the composite. The composite, as you know, in our realm, everything has an expiration date. So it arises for a moment because of, conditions, primary and secondary conditions. That's the teaching of the interdependence. Things will arise in conjunction and based on conditions that are conducive to its arising, and then they will dissipate and vanish. So everything that we love, everything we seek arises for a moment, and then, all these pleasures and happiness we find in samsaric realm is nothing but just a moment. It will always come to an end, including ourselves. So samsara is this ocean of suffering where we suffer the 3 kinds of suffering. We suffer the impermanence, and we suffer the emptiness of things. They arise and they vanish. Our body in the first stanza is likened to a ship, a boat, that can cross this perilous ocean and bring us to the other shore, where there is no samsara and everything that comes with it, all the pain and all the impermanence. The verse says that now we have gained the ship, meaning our body, that is the vessel, endowed with leisure and fortune. Leisure is the ability to practice Dharma. And fortune is the time in which the Buddha Dharma, the teaching, exists. And also we have the mind that is not impaired. We have the mind that is capable of learning and practicing the Dharma. Also, that means that at this time, when we gain this ship of leisure and fortune, the human body, we have already accumulated enough wisdom and merit from the previous lifetimes to have attained this precious human body. Because the human body is the only body, it's the only realm of the 6 realms of samsara in which Dharma can really be practiced. It's very difficult to practice Dharma when you're an animal or a hungry ghost or a hell being, So having gained this ship of leisure and fortune, the human existence, the human body also, it's very, very important that we spend the time, and enter the path. This fortune is so rare and so unique that to throw away this opportunity is simply madness, because that means just falling into a lower realm again and, living as, ignorant animals in the dark of ignorance, or, pretas, the hungry ghosts, where we're always seeking, and there's never any kind of satisfaction, etc. Therefore, the verse continues, because we recognize the suffering nature of samsara and we have the vessel and the means to leave it, what must we do then? The verse says we must ceaselessly hearing, pondering, and meditating day and night in order to liberate oneself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence is the Bodhisattva's practice. So that's what we must do. We must, without distraction, spend our time listening to the teaching, whether from the lamas or books. And of course, that's a complex topic in itself, because having teachings from lamas is also having their blessing. Then we have to, after hearing, we have to ponder the teaching in order to understand the essential meaning of the teaching. It's like squeezing the oil from a seed. If we want to get the essence, we squeeze the seed, we analyze, we ponder. And then we must meditate. We meditate because only through meditation can we absorb and assimilate the Dharma into our mind stream and into our life, right? Otherwise, it remains merely conceptual and useless, and concepts don't transform us. If we want transformation, if we want change, we meditate so the wisdom can work on us from within. It becomes habituated, it becomes absorbed, and the analogy that's always given is that there's no benefit in seeing a doctor and getting a medicine when you're ill. The whole point of the exercise is seeing the doctor, getting the medicine, and then taking the medicine. That's the only way we will become cured. If we simply keep the medicine on the shelf, we remain sick. So that's the point of the, hearing, pondering, and meditation. And also, please always remember, the Buddhas arise from practicing Dharma, wisdom and compassion. Dharma is wisdom and compassion, which you too can practice on your way to that destination, to Buddhahood, leaving the world of samsara. So that's a little instruction on the first stanza. Number 2, the mind of attachment to loved ones wavers like water. The mind of hatred to enemies burns like fire. The mind of ignorance, which forgets what to adopt and what to discard, is greatly obscured. Abandoning one's homeland is the Bodhisattva's practice. So, abandon one's homeland, what does it refer to? It does not refer to a geographical location per se, but more to the origin of birth and death, more to the origin of entering the samsaric cycle in this body, namely the 6 realms and their causes. Why do we wind up in the 6 realms of samsara? Why do we get a body and wander in samsara to begin with? We do that because of the 3 main poisons: attachment, desire, attachment, which is desire, and aversion, which is hatred, and ignorance, the dualistic mind that grasps itself and others as real. We talk about the 3 poisons or the 5 poisons. That's pretty much the same in essence. You know how we talk about the 3 channels. The 5 poisons are the same thing, really. The root poison of all the dualistic thinking is ignorance and not knowing that all phenomena, including the self, are illusory. Because we don't know that, we grasp onto them as real, and all the suffering arises from that. So this is the homeland that we are urged to leave. This is the place we are urged to leave. We are so habituated to it, to our self-grasping, the dualistic mind, and the five poisons. That, that's what we think of as, the locus of the self. We think of it as the essence. We think that that's who we are. So that's what this stanza refers to as homeland, because of our habitual, perpetual being, in this ignorance. And this ignorance creates the cyclical reoccurrence of taking birth in the six realms of samsara. Otherwise, attachment drowns us. Hatred burns us. Attachment to loved ones drowns us. We have preference for some people. Hatred burns us. Those we consider as enemies, we burn on fire, and we burn them, and we burn from the inside. And ignorance does not know what to adopt and what to discard. In other words, we don't have the view. We do not know what is beneficial and, and what is the opposite. We don't know what the nature of the poisons are. So we just wander around in this samsara, from one pleasure that turns into pain to the next. Our dreamlike world is split right down the middle into those we love and those we hate. That which we desire and that towards which we have aversion. We walk about in this invisible chasm of our own creation, creating more karma and therefore more suffering. So leaving our homeland is leaving the poisonous dualistic mind of division and going to the shore of equanimity, of wisdom, of our innate Buddhahood. Only when Buddhahood is restored in us again, because it is a restorative process, entering the path is restoring ourselves back to that which is only our nature. It's not something that we're grabbing from outside. It's not like another pleasure we're seeking in the samsaric world. No, it's something that we are restoring to ourselves. It's like being blind and restoring vision again. It's restoring when our vision returns to us. We know the nature of things and of ourselves, and the poisons are left behind. They're quieted, and eventually they're left behind. This is what we must leave behind. It's not our true homeland, this dualistic mind and the poisons and samsara that's created as a result of that. It's really kind of like leaving samsara is like awakening from a bad dream in which we have been for countless eons, for countless lifetimes. Our homeland is enlightenment of Buddhahood. It has always been there with us. It is our nature. It is our basis. So that's really the essence of the shloka number 2. That's leaving our homeland, is leaving our poisons behind. Number 3, when harmful places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually diminish. Without distraction, virtuous endeavors naturally increase. Being clear-minded, definitive understanding of the Dharma arises. Resorting to secluded places is the Bodhisattva's practice. So, what are the harmful places? They are each and all situations in which negative emotions arise, and where we have no power to resist the force of karma and ignorance. And we cannot abandon or transform them because we're still just beginners. We're just beginning on the path. Later, when we have much more kind of an awakened nature, we have clarity of mind, our practice is very strong. We can bring it with us into life, into every situation. We can go into these poisonous situations and we can calm them like firemen extinguishing the fire. But in the beginning, it's like being in a burning house. We have to leave. We have to run. We have to leave all the places that stimulate our negativity, that stimulate the arising of the poisons and all the things that come about as a result of that. For example, if you're if you're an alcoholic and you want to recover, right? You don't want to be an addict. You don't want to drink. You abandon going to parties and bars. You abandon all the places and circumstances that are conducive to stimulating the addictions. And, because the addiction will manifest if your practice is not completely stable And, you walk into these situations where, addictions have started to begin with, that will naturally arise in those kinds of situations until much later down the road. So we abandon all those places, Phenomena are impermanent and also devoid of substantial existence. In other words, things arise only momentarily, and because they are composites, they break down and change. So when thinking of what emptiness means, think of these two meanings: arising momentarily as a composite and breaking down because it's impermanent. Phenomena arise momentarily based on conditions, circumstances, and projections, only to vanish again like the clouds in the sky, like Michael said in our meditation. And our delusion, our ignorance, leads us to the wrong places all the time and the company of wrong individuals. And so, given those circumstances, what will arise are the poisons. The poisons will become reignited in those circumstances. So we create more and more negative karma with which we will have to deal with. So we seek worldly things and worldly pleasures in a constant, never-ending cyclical pursuit, wasting all of our time and life essence. But if we have had the glimpse of sanity, we have the teaching, we have the fortune of the Buddhist path ahead of us, we should abandon these difficult situations. And we should reserve all of our energies to pursue and to be dedicated and to pursue the path. Because the never-ending appetite and pursuit of for delusory things in this life should subside through study and contemplation. And we have to be very brutally honest with ourselves. We have to find all these difficult situations, places, and people in our life, and we have to abandon them or transform them. We either have to walk away from them if we know that the fire of wisdom is very faint and it's not gonna, and it'll be extinguished in these difficult circumstances, or at least, maybe we know we have the strength to deal with difficult situations or people with compassion. Then if we are brutally honest and we know we can have compassion instead of delusion, we can enter and be in those situations. So the clarity regarding the nature of samsara should start to dawn in our mind, thus naturally turning our mind away from wasting our precious human life on trivial pursuits, which all end up in suffering due to change. And it's like, our favorite food that we love very, very quickly can turn into like hell, because it can very quickly, we eat it, we love it, we love ice cream, and suddenly the next week you go to the doctors and you have diabetes, and suddenly whatever you love turned into this horrendous thing that now threatens your life. That's what it's like to pursue pleasures, and not to be on the path. So pacifying delusional states, pacifying desire and attachment, pacifying the poisonous emotions, clarity will naturally arise. That's what the stanza says. When harmful places are abandoned, clarity will naturally arise. We will become less distracted, and our mind will become not just a container of delusion, but slowly will become a container of wisdom and compassion, which arise through clarity and pacification of ignorance. If we are diligent and set aside distractions of this life, we will transform our being and progress on the path naturally, just as the Buddhists have before us. So those are the three preliminary stanzas that I think is good to stop here today.
Great. Thank you, Victoria.
Oh, I want Michael to read a very important quote from Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, this heart of compassion, because it deals particularly with these preliminaries. This to hear.
When the Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma, he taught the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that there is suffering and it should be recognized. The second noble truth is that suffering has a cause, which therefore needs to be given up. That causes the kleshas, the negative emotions or afflicting mental factors. Although there are many such obscured states of mind, the five principal obscurations are desire, aggression, ignorance, pride, and jealousy. The third noble truth is that there is a path that leads beings away from suffering. This path, therefore, needs to be followed. The fourth noble truth is that suffering can thus be brought to cessation. Through the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha urged us to renounce worldly concern and strive for liberation from samsara. Okay, let's see if we have some questions about this. Oh, the 84,000, not 8,400. 84,000 is an app that Zonsar Khyentse Rinpoche and his Sangha have started. 84,000. So you got to go to like an app store and see if you want to put that on your device. And the yellow book is it may be available at Garchen Institute.
Nick is posting it.
I'm not sure if it is, but we're gonna post it as a PDF, I think. Right?
Yes.
Is there a reading you recommend for someone starting this? Yes, we just put up The Heart of Compassion. I want to read a quote that I wanted to share this morning that I thought was great. This is from Buddha, the Dhammapada, was a collections of sayings of the Buddha in verse form. One of the best known and most widely esteemed texts in the Pali Tripitaka, the sacred scriptures of Buddhism. He who formerly was reckless and afterwards became sober or aware brightens up this world like the moon when freed from the clouds. Which I think is very important to remember, especially in our current world where, people find it harder and harder to accept that people can change, and that people can become aware and people can change the way they think and behave. Often we're very quick to, look back at someone's life, even things they did maybe 20 years ago, and condemn them for that and put them in a box in relation to actions they did a long time ago, even though 20 years later they may be very different people and have learned and have practiced and have done things and purified and whatever and changed, so and to give ourselves hope and confidence that our own poisons and ignorance and obscurations can be pacified and cleared away, and that progress can be made in this lifetime. I love that quote. And there's a very similar quote by Dilgo Khyentse. He says the same things. I think it's very beautiful. Any more questions? How often do you meditate? I mean, the best thing about meditation, the best thing you can do with meditation is make it a practice, make it a part of your routine. The word meditation, when it's translated into, I guess, Tibetan or Sanskrit, actually means habituation. So it's important to make this part of your daily routine as much as you can. I mean, if there's a day when you can't because of situations, of course, but the more regular you can be, even if it's for a very short period of time at first, even if you do it for 5 minutes a day, but fine, often the morning's good, after you have your coffee or before you do your prayers or exercise or whatever, or at night before you go to bed. But the more regular you can be about it, the better. Don't set yourself impossible goals like I'm going to do 2 hours every day. Make it very manageable at first. And you'll see that gradually you want to do it more, and you'll see that it's, it starts to really help. Just wanted to know your opinion on Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. I haven't read A New Earth. I read a little bit of Be Here Now. I prefer to go to the source. I mean, Eckhart Tolle takes a lot of things from Buddhism and Hinduism and other spiritual practices. He certainly didn't invent whatever he's teaching. I'm sure a lot of it's valuable and true, but we're kind of purists and prefer the source. The beautiful thing about Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, which we practice, is that this is a lineage that has been passed down from teacher to student for 2,500 years, unbroken. And there, especially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is a very, very deep appreciation and importance placed on that lineage and placed on the purity and truth of that lineage. So I encourage you to go to the source. That's my opinion. You should do whatever works for you. Have you always practiced? No, we started practicing. We started practicing around 2007, 8. And in the beginning it was very hard for me, especially. For me to do, not to do it as well as just to convince myself that I need to do it. I thought, I would become a Buddhist and basically read here and there and go to a few teachings, and everything would change. And like anything of value, it takes effort and time and practice. Like learning anything that's important.
And it's a skill. I mean, think of really, practice as constantly becoming more, gaining the ability to see clearer and clearer, like your eyesight. You'd be going to the doctor, right? If your eyesight was impaired. And little by little, the doctor would cure you from blindness going into complete vision. So think of the Buddhist path pretty much as the convalescing from an illness of blindness, something like that. That's why we do it.
What caused you to get into meditation practice? Well, I got into Buddhism before meditation. So Buddhism and meditation is a practice within Buddhism, right? What was it that drew? Yeah, because we didn't grow up with Buddhism as a cultural thing, right? I grew up Roman Catholic. That was my cultural, ethnic kind of, background. But I really didn't connect much to it or practice it. But as an adult, as I got older, there was, to be really frank, my whole 20s were dedicated to becoming an actor, really. I really had no other interests or pursuits much at all. And then when that kind of came to a certain fruition in terms of career and success and even money and things like that, and family, wife, kids, things like that, and house and all that, yet there was still something that was not, there was still like this dissatisfaction and depression even and things like that. And it was like, well, obviously I thought this would cure everything, this would be the fulfillment of everything of my life and things like that, and it wasn't. And there was something that was missing, and it really was a spiritual component, which was, basically learning the truth, about existence and who we are, what are we doing here, why are we here, and what's the point of everything. And that, caused me to search several different spiritual pursuits, and Buddhism was the one that really made the most sense and stuck. How often do we have these classes? Oh, pretty much once a week. I post usually Friday or Saturday on Instagram. That's the way to find it. Did you both start together? Yes, pretty much we did.
May I also address something to the previous question? Why did you start Buddhism? I think innately we all know, worldly pleasures is like drinking salt water. The thirst is always there. It is never quenched. And after doing that for a certain amount of time, this innate kind of a desire to know about reality, know about more deeper truth, not just, drinking the salt water, arises in all of us. I think it's always there, it's like we live in a cave, but we've seen a little glimpse of light. And so, after drinking so much salt water, after a while you really just want to come out into the light and see everything. And I think it is an innate element in us. I think all religions and all kinds of spiritual modalities stand exactly to that. So it's about finding the thing that really speaks to you.
Has this helped you find peace and acceptance in your life?
Definitely.
Yeah, listen, still you're dealing with life, you're dealing with things that bother you, you're things with things that where you grasp at. Still, but without a doubt, practice gives you a perspective on things, and a perspective on relating to other people. which when you think about it, a lot of our difficulties stem from our relationships, both with close ones, loved ones, and strangers, and people we just that encounter in our lives in a new fashion or in a daily fashion, in a random fashion, seemingly random fashion.
Yeah, and practice also illuminates the inner space of how you relate to anything. So it's not a mystery. Practice eventually gets you to the point where you're not saying, "Oh, that guy is bad. He made me do this and this." You've illuminated the inner dark space, so you know where these things arise. And you also, through practice, realize that you can transform and channel these things according to your mind. You don't have to always fall victim to these things arising in you.
Uh, these are just comments. Yeah, like I said before, it's like everything we perceive, everything originates from our mind. Our operating system, if you will. Our the is the mind. Everything we experience gets filtered through the mind. Everything you see, the vision doesn't work without the mind, which is interpreting and translating and transmitting and communicating. So Buddhism is really not about adopting a bunch of rules to follow. Of course, there's ethical discipline that has to be followed if you're following the spiritual path. You can't just be a liar and a cheat and a thief, and expect to make spiritual progress. I mean, you have to have there's sanity, and you have to be reasonable. But it's not about saying this is wrong and this is right. It's really about working with your mind. And that's why meditation is such a critical aspect of the path. Number 3 of the Bodhisattva practice says to live alone in seclusion. As a New Yorker, this is impossible. Can one still practice to be a Bodhisattva? Good question.
Definitely. I mean, yes, of course, people were in, Tibet when, this was composed. A lot of people became yogis and abandoned ordinary pursuits of life. They abandoned their family lives and went to really just to meditate in the caves. It's not really a viable option for us, but we can abandon difficult situations. We can abandon, to a certain extent, we can abandon and we can certainly abandon our negative emotions dealing with others. We can transform difficult emotions. We can become more aware and more compassionate. And we can, our relationships, we can transform them. We can certainly skip on a lot of unnecessary pursuits and use that time instead of, each time drinking salt water and being thirsty. We can take away the triviality of our life and use that space, those reserves, for practice and meditation. So without the, going away into seclusion of a cave.
Although, if you have an opportunity to do a retreat,
Sure.
without a doubt, there's value in that. But it's even like the great masters, at times, I think Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche himself wanted to go into retreat and seclusion for the rest of his life, and he was told by maybe the Dalai Lama or maybe it was Jamyang Khyentse,
Sure.
some great Lama said, no, you need to teach. The world needs your teachings. He did not live his life in seclusion. He did go to retreat many times before, but a lot, especially the latter part of his life, he traveled a lot. He came to America and the West, and he was teaching to be of benefit of all beings. So a lot of that, if you think about secluded places, is your mind as well, and creating that space in your mind. What are your thoughts on how to keep discipline in your practice when life challenges are happening? If that becomes difficult, even practicing after a long time. You almost answered your own question. How to keep discipline when life challenges are happening is by keeping discipline, which doesn't make sense, but does in a way. It's I think the further you go into this path and the more this really becomes like breathing and part of your life, and because it does, if you really make efforts and make aspirations, and this these things will become more important to you. You know, you start to imagine you cannot live your life without it.
Right.
So when life challenges happen and things are difficult, you're naturally going to rely on this, and you're naturally going to go with this. That does not mean that sometimes you're going to be possessed by anxiety and difficulties and things like that. But knowing that you have practice, that you have teachings, that you have meditation will give you support to be able to get through these things, hopefully faster, without doing further damage and things like that.
Yeah. And also, I think it's very important to remember practical things in life. So, in difficult situations, try not to be right, try to be kind. Try to really be certain that you're acting from a virtuous, kind, and patient place. That's the discipline, bringing the paramitas along on the path, making sure. But above all, also just remember, the wisdom paramita. Things are impermanent and delusory. What we see is not really what there is. So it's, to understand that and to really incorporate it into our daily routines and activities is to not give so much importance to our judgments and how we classify things and people. And again, like Michael said, the killer can become the Buddha, and eventually he will. It's actually something that everybody must go through. Life is there to transform, to go from dark to light. So, have patience and, arm yourself, obviously, with strong ethical conduct and the view.
I'm currently working at a new job that I feel affects my mental health and puts me back on my old negative path and is starting to make me ignore the important things for me, such as meditation. What do you think I should do? You should go ahead.
Wake up earlier, and before you go to work, cut away half an hour of your sleep, wake up early, and set your intention and start to do tonglen on all the difficult places in your life, and start transforming them. Because remember, if you walk in there and you're burning on fire with hatred and negativity, everything for the rest of the day will be marked by heat, by this discomfort. If you go in and you have a certain attitude, you've set your mind on reducing the heat, you've set your mind on benefiting, the work environment will become also better. If, on the other hand, if you cannot stand that work environment, obviously seek to change it.
If possible, yeah.
If possible.
I mean, but, at the end of the day, you got to get your ass on the cushion, as they say. I mean, it really is that. I mean, we can come up with a million reasons why not to, or we don't have time. Someone's asking a newborn baby, what do I do in the house? It's like either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, she said something important before. You can see the doctor can diagnose you with a problem. The doctor can prescribe you with a medicine. And this is going to help you get better. But if you don't take it, you're never going to get better. It's up to you to open the jar and take the pill, right? The same here. It's really the same thing.
And it's very important to really do practice in the morning. It's important to do it in the morning and in the day, and if possible, in between. But in the morning, you really set your intention. You want to you want to move toward enlightenment to benefit others, yourself included. And in the evening, you simply examine and you ask yourself, did I use my practice? Did I employ all the techniques and the methods in order to accomplish the wisdom? Because, methods without the wisdom are meaningless, and wisdom without methods is impotent. So you really need both.
Do you think that these practices can help me to cope with mental illness? I join because I believe they can, and even after a short time, I believe they are. Well, if you're finding that, that's very good. We always recommend if you feel you have mental illness or you've been diagnosed with mental illness to get professional help first. Therapy, a psychoanalyst, psychologist. Sometimes that can be even medication, whatever. That's very, very important. And we always encourage that first. Spiritual practice, without a doubt, can be a very good component towards treating and a good support towards that treatment of mental illness, without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
I will say this, in the whatever 15, however many years we've been involved in Buddhism, we've been around a lot of really great teachers and monks and lamas, and a lot of them are very old. I have never ever come across, this is very interesting, some of them are very advanced in age. Never once have I seen one suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that, no matter how old they were. I'm not guaranteeing that if you meditate, you're not going to experience these things, but just a side note, that's been my experience. Um, um, and without a doubt, I'm sure meditation could help. And probably most therapists that you speak to, there's a lot of
Buddhist
especially in
therapists.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche Sangha, a lot of his students became therapists. So there's a lot of therapists that are Buddhists and use their therapy from a Buddhist perspective. So maybe look into that. Try to Google that, Buddhist therapist in your neighborhood, and I'm sure now they do it online. I catch myself blaming others for some of the difficulties I experience, but I'm getting better and quicker at checking in with myself and seeing what's my part.
Right.
Yeah,
That
that's
means
good.
that means the practice is working. And remember, people don't have inherent qualities, he's the enemy. The enemy is projected from us. Now, if it's a difficult person, you have two ways of dealing with it. You can abandon the difficult place, or if you have enough practice and you're strong and stable enough, you can transform it. If good energy comes from you, it will indubitable. First of all, the negative energy of another is not going to influence you, is not going to make you lose your balance. But more importantly, you can influence them by bringing your view, your clarity to them and transforming them. This is no doubt about that.
What do you give to young people, teens and 20s, when they are at an age where they want to immerse themselves in seeking pleasures of this world? This person's talking about their children, being a parent. I mean, honestly, it's very hard. I remember being at a teaching of the Dalai Lama, and a woman asked him, she was having difficulties with her teenage daughter, and what she should do, and he said, I don't know. I guess because he had not had children. This is very, 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 very difficult. I think the one thing you can do is be an example, like because they can see if you start to transform, if you start to change, if you start to adopt different practices and different things, not only can they see, but even subconsciously or unconsciously, those things start to rub off. But giving advice to kids, I mean, they're your kid, you're the parents. It's always going to be taken with a certain perspective and taken in a certain way.
But I think also when dealing with difficult issues, with your children or anyone, always examining your voice, always examining your intention, trying to give them love while you're discussing difficulties makes a huge, vast difference also to yourself. That means you don't lose the seat, you don't lose your clarity, you're not just thrown into and burned by anger. Try to always start with a good mind, do with a good mind and end with a good mind. I think if anything, that's super important.
Okay, with that, we'll close. I want to thank, as always, Nick Solidio, our
Thank you,
producer,
Nick.
for his kindness and generosity. Without, we would not have this class. Thank you, Victoria, for joining us and for your contributions today, and for all of you for being here. Let's dedicate the merit of today's session to the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you. See you next week.